What's up? My name is James Heller. I'm part of the Atlas portfolio, and today I wanted to take a little bit of time and cover several types of motivated sellers in today's real estate market. A lot of people are thinking real estate market is red hot right now. Who's motivated to sell? I mean, people know that the price of their home has gone way up. They know that there are a million buyers out there looking for properties. Why don't they just list it on the market for top dollar? Even in today's hot market, we've been able to close at least one deal every 2 weeks. And oftentimes these deals are upwards of $40,000, $45,000, $50,000. So even in this type of market, this type of hot climate that's obviously favoring sellers, there are still motivated leads that you can go after. And I want to cover a couple of those with you today. So the three types of motivated sellers that we're going to talk about today are sellers looking to do a 1031, sellers with terrible COVID tenants, and out-of-state sellers. A lot of these will apply all the time, but particularly in today's climate, I think these three buckets are most applicable and represent the best leads that you should be going after to get deals done. All right, so the first one we'll look at is sellers looking to do a 1031. What is a 1031? That's the first question. For those of you that aren't familiar, a 1031 is basically an opportunity that you have to defer taxes from capital gains down the road. Doesn't mean that you eliminate it forever. Basically, it means instead of paying those taxes today, you can roll all the capital gains that you have in this property into the next one. And then eventually, if you were to sell that subsequent property, you would then pay taxes on it. So why does this create motivation? Well, 1031 has pretty strict timelines. A property, or up to 3 properties actually, must be identified within 45 days of the sale of the sold property. So if you close on your home that you're selling, you now have a 45-day window to identify up to 3 properties that you intend to purchase. You don't have to close on all 3 of those. You really only have to close on 1, and you have an additional window to actually close on that 1 property. Now, everyone knows you can identify 3 properties. They can be bought by 3 other people, right? So that's part of the difficulty. If you end up not buying one of these 3 properties, then you have to pay the taxes on the capital gains from your original property. So within 180 days, that actually includes the first 45 days. That's your entire window to close on that property that you've identified. So what does that mean? How does that help us, people that are sourcing deals and trying to help these folks out? What value can we offer to these types of sellers? If you look at their motivation, they have a fairly tight timeline. And there's a big risk that they can end up paying taxes on this entire amount of capital gains. If somebody bought their home in the 80s or 90s for maybe less than $100,000, and I know in my market, at least in Denver, it could now be worth $800,000, $900,000. They're gonna pay capital gains on all of that money, and they could potentially be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes on that sale. So there's a big risk for them there. And especially in this market, it actually plays to your advantage a little bit here because the market is so hot that they are going to have a tough time finding a new property. So as easy as it might be for them to sell their property, it's difficult to stay on that timeline because now they have to kind of scramble to find another property that they're able to close on while they're competing with all of these other folks that are trying to do the same thing. So what is the strategy here? Well, what you can do in a lot of cases is provide flexibility. And what I've done in the past is actually start with a longer term contract. Generally, we'll go to like 90 days if we have to, and give them the option to bring that contract time in the event that they find a place during that time. Because that 45 days actually doesn't start until you close on the deal. So what that means is you've got 90 days. They know that they have guaranteed cash coming their way and they can start looking for other real estate options. Once they actually lock one up, they have it under contract, you can bring in that contract time, pay them cash for their property, and then they're able to easily close on their new property that they've identified. Makes it a lot less stressful for them, and they might be willing to give you a discount on their property for offering this kind of service to them. This is a great seller because they're not necessarily motivated because of the condition of their home. Their property could be very nice, but their timeline is sort of driving that motivation, which means you're picking up a deal for providing a service and providing flexibility to that seller. So the next one that I want to talk about, this one is pretty clear, pretty obvious, and obviously a direct effect because of COVID. But a lot of people had to deal with terrible tenants during COVID that they couldn't evict. So as of August 26th, 2021, the federal ban on evictions has ended, meaning those homeowners can now evict their tenants for any of the normal eviction reasons. So previously, tenants could not be evicted for almost any reason, including damage to the property, failure to pay rent, etc. Lots of reasons, and the tenants were very well protected. So with that ending, there's more options for sellers to now clear out their bad tenants and try to figure out what to do with their property. One thing I want to note is that now that some of these owners are able to evict their tenants are not happy, and they're really leaving the property in shambles. They might be behind on their payments, which in turn means that the owner can be behind on their mortgage payments, and that's where the motivation is coming from. So I want to give one example of a deal we actually closed recently. The tenants had been living in the property for quite some time, not paying rent. There was really nothing that the owner could do about this except push back their mortgage payments, which the mortgage company was happy to tack on to the end. So they're not actually saving any money, they're just pushing this off into the future, which is actually called mortgage forbearance. It's not a great situation. When the owner was finally able to evict the tenants from the property, the tenants were not happy, trashed the entire place, spray painted the whole inside, tore up the wall panels, the floor panels, they broke out windows, and they actually ran the water just continuously for hours to run up a water bill just because they were upset with the owner. So they get evicted. They actually end up going to jail on drug charges. They were not able to recover any of the damages that were done to the house. So that's where we found this seller. She was left with this place she's paying a mortgage on, is completely unrentable, and she has no money to fix it up. So we were able to work out a deal with her. She got paid in cash in 15 days. She was able to pay off the mortgage, which was fantastic for her. And then even she had about $1,000 outstanding water bill from these tenants just running the water just to piss her off, really. And we also covered that as part of the deal. So you can tell, I mean, the motivation there, they have damage to their property and no funds to repair their properties. The mortgage was not covered due to damage and vacancy, so they're still paying this mortgage. They're basically, drowning in this mortgage that they can't cover because they can't get new renters in there. And then in general, they may just now have a negative attitude towards managing a rental. I think during COVID, there was this thought that landlords are all these, yacht owning, luxury having rich people with tons of properties. This woman, this was her only rental. She actually grew up in this house. It was her childhood home. And when her parents passed away, they handed it down to her. So she decided to manage it as a rental. It's the only one that she had. And in a lot of cases, people might only own one rental or maybe two rentals or something like that. And if their tenants aren't paying rent, that's a huge impact to them. So you may develop sort of a negative attitude and just decide, you know what, it's not worth my time anymore. I would prefer to sell this. So your strategy really is to provide ease. The house was in total shambles. We didn't ask them to fix anything up. We didn't ask them to take anything out. We dealt with everything. We bought it exactly as it stood. We made the timeline as short as possible. That way she's not throwing money away on a mortgage that she has to pay out of pocket. We were able to close within 15 days, which was great. And then in our case, the property was vacant, but you also have the option to absorb those annoying tenants and offer cash for keys. So if you're in a position where you have a good enough deal, you can give the tenants some money to take off, $2,000, $3,000, something like that, just depending on where you are and what they're paying. That may be your best way to go, and basically just absorb these headaches for the seller and take care of it. This woman ended up bringing us 2 other deals on the same street. We bought her house, we made $45,000. We're buying the house across the street, we're gonna make $50,000. And then the next door neighbor is also somebody that we're working with today, and we hope to get that deal done as well. So the third type of motivated seller that I wanna talk about in today's super hot real estate market is out-of-state sellers. This is not really specifically to COVID, but certainly COVID has created a situation where a lot of folks may have a second home, something like that. So huge numbers of residents have left cities during COVID and moved to more rural, less populated areas. You hear a lot of folks talk about wanting to leave the cities, leaving New York City, leaving San Francisco, leaving even Denver, moving to more rural areas, mountain towns where they can get a little bit of space, do things that they enjoy outside. So, in a lot of cases, they may have held on to their primary property just in case things didn't go to plan. If they changed their mind, maybe they want to move back at some point. So they held on to the place, maybe they rented it out, maybe they kept it vacant, whatever it may be. So in addition, a lot of folks inherit or own older properties that they do not have a strong emotional connection to. What does that mean? Either they inherited this from their parents, maybe they've never even seen the property, maybe they've owned a property for 30 years and it just doesn't hold that same emotional connection to them anymore. In general, when people have not as strong of an emotional connection to a property, they're gonna be more likely to consider selling that property and selling it quickly in some cases. Beyond that, the average homeowner really would like to be within driving distance of properties that they own, something like within a half an hour. Otherwise, it becomes a little more difficult. They have to manage it remotely. They probably have a property manager, and it's more of an investment at that point. It probably doesn't carry the same emotional weight for them. So what is the motivation that we're sort of working on with people that are out of state? Well, they don't have access to the property, right? So if repairs are needed, if anything comes up, they can't look at the property when they want to. So they don't have access. They're probably dealing with a property manager. There is some hassle of dealing with a sale remotely. So even if they hire an agent, they still have to do a lot of the legwork. They may have to fly out. They probably have to take a lot of meetings. They have to trust that this person is doing everything without them sort of overseeing the whole project. So there is some hassle there. And beyond that, they may have moved to a less expensive market. We have lots of folks that moved out of Denver to other areas like Wyoming, like Arizona, where the market is just cheaper. And now they are able to take the equity that they have in Denver, sell that, and they might be able to turn one rental property into 2 wherever they are now. So it's a great time for them to capitalize on the equity that they've built up in their home state. So the strategy here, you want to make this as easy as possible for the person. And providing an offer sight unseen is a big deal because they don't want to have to show the property. They don't even want to line it up with their property manager. So if you can give them a pretty good estimate or even a formal offer of what you can pay without even seeing the property, that's a big benefit for these folks. Do your best to work around their schedule and situation. If you have digital solutions, I use DocuSign for almost everything. You can send a mobile notary for closing with title. Make it as easy for them as possible. I mean, that's the reason why they want to do business with you rather than an agent who's going to be calling all the time and asking for a million different things. Do everything that you can to keep their hassle to a minimum. And then finally, reduce the number of showings that are needed. And I just mentioned this earlier, but you don't want to have to get in there too many times. You could offer to take the keys and put a lockbox on the property so you can just kind of let yourself in when you need to. But do your best and even get in direct contact if they have a tenant or a property manager. Don't ask that they make all the phone calls. Just say, listen, give me the phone number. I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it. And just give them that ease and the simplicity of selling without worrying too much. So these are the 3 types of motivated sellers that I see in today's hot real estate market. I hope that this video was helpful for you. We've had a lot of success with these 3 types of motivated sellers, and I see that we will continue to have that success going forward through 2022. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment if you thought this was interesting. Really appreciate you being here. And again, my name is James Heller. My company is the Atlas Portfolio. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or things that you'd like to talk about. All right, thank you so much.